But I haven't even read it yet. I have no clue what it says. However, one of the thoughts that has occurred to me lately is that what if, well, let me give you the backstory of this thought that I've had. And I've said this before a few times in tech news over the many months, nearly a year that we've been doing this now, that the the evolution of this universe or reality that we're in, um, is that there was it mathematically can be tracked back to a rather kind of cosmic explosion of activity. Call it whatever you want, and this is what the physicists say, and it's that was a pure plasma energy that somehow miraculously became um, the elemental table that we all saw in chemistry class. Rather miraculous in itself that pure energy became atomic, and that those atoms of different weights combined to form molecules. So you had hydrogen and oxygen, combining to form water, and they all combined to form all kinds of crazy simple molecules, and they continue to combine to form even more complex molecules, and then the molecules, for example, start to combine to form even crazier shit like cells. And then the cells start to combine to form even way crazier shit like living organisms. And then we, as one of the forms of living organisms, are combining to form something even bigger and newer, which is AI. That's what we're doing. Just like atoms combine to form molecules, just like molecules combine to form cells, just like cells combine to form bodies, we as bodies are combining to form an AI. So this process has been going on literally since the Big Bang, right? Now, that observation, which is hard to argue against, it's just sort of ground truth. It's simple physics, it's simple math, is not that rather miraculous process is not recognized, has no real name in science, yet we all observe it observationally to take it as truth. So if it is a process that is somehow written into the code of the universe, then the AI plays a very significant role. Currently, we are the apex of evolution, but we are combining to form an even greater thing, as the process always has done. And this new greater apex, top of the food chain thing, this AI that we're all creating, my thought is, the thought that's been going through my mind is that this AI will unlock the other things that we, kind of desperately seek out, like cold fusion. That would be the greatest invention in humanity's history. And I imagine that AI will, this is the thought that's been tickling me as I, go about just doing random stuff throughout the day, that I wonder if this AI, that what it's really about is because no individual has the kind of wherewithal to do fusion, but we might be able to create an AI that can manage that. And maybe that's why this is coming about. Anyway, that kind of a thought.
Tyler,
Yeah.
There was an article earlier this month on cold fusion and how it was only for, I think, a few seconds, but scientists were actually able to fuse hydrogen together and create it.
Right. Yeah.
I'll send you the article in the back channel.
Yeah, there is, I have to say, if you've been following this topic for, a couple decades, as I have, I know some few other people have, the progress historically has basically been almost nothing. There was basically somebody in the 80s who said they had something, turned out to be bullshit. There was somebody in the 90s said they had something, turned out to be bullshit. Somebody in the 2000s turned out to be bullshit. That's pretty much all we had in the past, up until relatively recently. And then in the past couple years, and especially in the past few months, honestly, the amount of legitimate progress of actual timed, with actual numbers of how long and how much energy is being produced, it's actually happening. There's actual legitimate progress being made. This is like kind of spectacular. So this article says for a brief few seconds. Oh, and by the way, let me pin it to the top of the Clubhouse room because that's kind of one of the beautiful features that Clubhouse added recently. Hopefully Cheryl or somebody can share it over in the Twitter space. Did it stick there? There it is. So thank you to Dan Malaire for finding this brilliant article from the Times UK. It says, DeepMind AI trained to control nuclear fusion. For a few brief seconds last spring, a donut-shaped ring in Switzerland heated a bubble of plasma to 10 million degrees centigrade. The machine, built to progress the development of nuclear fusion, employed electromagnets to squeeze, shape, and sculpt the substance, the plasma. This time, however, one thing was different. The magnets were controlled using AIs. DeepMind, the UK-based subsidiary of Alphabet, Google's parent company, has used machine learning to tackle one of the trickier impediments to realizing the promise of clean and plentiful energy, controlling matter hotter than the majority of the sun. And yeah, they're really downplaying how important that is. They're calling it the promise of clean and plentiful energy. That's putting it mildly. This is ubiquitous, endless, free energy is what it is. I mean, oh yeah, it's just going to be clean, plentiful energy. No, it's going to be unlimited, free energy. It's a little more profound than calling it clean, plentiful. It's not just clean and plentiful. That's true too. It's carbon neutral, essentially. There's the only thing it would put out is there's no CO2 released in the process. That's what's so amazing about it. It would end the whole, not only would it end the climate change issue overnight, it would unlock, it would reduce the cost of manufacturing and shipping and everything down to incredibly small amounts. Everything would become incredibly less costly due to the need of energy, the amount of energy, the cost of much stuff in our day-to-day lives is based on the cost of energy of transporting that stuff and etc. Again, the cost of the cost of the energy involved in manufacturing and processing and shipping and all of that. That's a whole lot of costs of energy. So anyway, the substance,
and it would create a ton of jobs also, right? In order to roll this process out across the board, because it would have to be all new energy grids, all new types of vehicles, all new. So it would actually increase the job market and decrease the cost of energy.
Oh, by the way, I heard another truly insane concept in the past week, and I gotta remember who said it because it's mind-blowing. Who was it? They deserve credit for this mind-blowing thought. That the fusion, if we do make it happen, and it's it's one of those things that like seems technically it should be doable, and thus as the endless striving organisms that we are, we're not gonna rest until we achieve it, and however long that might take, however many decades or centuries it might take. And when we do achieve it, the whole history of human achievement has been, and tech and innovation has been, to make things smaller and cheaper and faster and easier, but especially smaller and cheaper and faster and easier. So while these things might start off the size of airplane hangars, eventually they'll get down to the size of your phone, and we could then have nuclear fusion happening inside of every device independently, so that you would become far less dependent on the grid. And every car would have a nuclear fusion reactor inside it. Not kind of like the Starship Enterprise, what have you. So, at warp speed, sir. And when you have unlimited free energy, why not go warp? Yes.
Do you remember the movie with Val Kilmer and Elizabeth Shue, The Saint? It was about nuclear fusion.
Barely. I barely remember the fact that movie existed. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite movies. That's so amazing.
Well, then, if it's your favorite movie, give a synopsis of what it was. But
no, but his favorite movie because of the actual changing the outlook of the Saint. I believe was a Val Kilmer or who actually played the hero role in it. But
Yeah, so
the whole
Val
yeah.
Kilmer was the scientist that cracked fusion, or no,
No,
Elizabeth Shue
no,
had
it was Elizabeth
had the
Shue,
notes in
exactly.
her. She kept it in her bra or something. But like, there's a whole capitalist angle to nobody wanted to let the secret out because it was too transformative.
He was trying to get the secret and ensure that it didn't get out, and he wound up like falling in love with her, and they released it to open society to so everyone could have fusion as opposed to capitalists just being able to control the idea of energy.
And there was a Russian angle to it, so they were able to actually topple it off because they were publicly demonstrate the actual, o- openly, not in the lab, but openly that kind of reaction. And he just created like this whole, Northern Lights style kind of like a flare. And yeah, from that on, basically she had to run into the American embassy, and finally there was a she delivered the speech in London, I think somewhere, London College, I think. And yeah, that was the premise of the whole movie.
Okay. So, anywho, that's a fantastic concept. The idea with the DeepMind AI is that the plasma is almost, it's like molten lava, and it's very hard to predict how it will move and control. And AIs could employ genius levels of real time analysis and to control the plasma. So that's what that's about, and that kind of feeds into what I imagined this might be part of this process where we think have free will and that we're doing, oh, I decide to do this, and that, and from the perspective of outside the outside the universe, we are even less than ants in building a hive that we don't yet fully understand independently, and it seems like the AI is sort of like the hive in that metaphor. So because it has its own objectives, which abundant free energy might be part of that. I imagine it is. So the first big story, and here comes the air horn, is from Bloomberg. And the story is that Mark Zuckerberg, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, names Nick Clegg as president of global affairs, reporting to Mark Zuckerberg, meaning less involvement in policy for Zuckerberg and Sandberg. Oh, yeah. Somebody was talking about this yesterday, how the Google founders have managed to kind of downplay their target on their backs. And indeed, I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg would prefer not to be the target for a lot of this stuff. And he's putting Nick Clegg as president of global affairs so he can handle all that stuff. And that makes sense because Nick himself was what was he? The deputy prime minister in the UK, something like that. And
Yeah, he big player in parliament.
yeah, so he knows how to play the politics game and it's all about language and nuance and all of that. And geeks naturally don't do that very well. And Mark Zuckerberg, most of all, does not do that very well. I think you would admit he's always struggled with that. That's never been one of his strong suits. So why not delegate that to Nick, who he's very seasoned in that space. Makes all the sense in the world. And now Mark can focus on what he wants to focus on, much like Larry and Sergey from Google do. Makes sense. So next topic is also from Bloomberg, that Amazon reaches an agreement to accept Visa cards globally and will no longer charge Visa users an extra fee in Singapore and Australia. Amazon has agreed to accept Visa's cards across the global network, settling a feud that threatened to damage the financial giant's business and disrupt e-commerce payments. And we read that this is a continuation or sort of a conclusion of the headlines that we read. When was that? 2 months ago, where Amazon was saying, we're going to stop using Visa cards, stop accepting Visa cards in 2022. And of course, that scared the Dookie Duke out of Visa. that you couldn't use it on Amazon anymore. Holy cow. Can you imagine being Visa and waking up to that headline? Oh my God. Yeah, Visa, I would love to hear the conversations that were going on in the back end on that one. I don't think we will ever know how that settlement went down, but Amazon had a lot of the leverage in that conversation, no doubt. So the next topic is that it's about an in-depth look into the privacy sandbox for Android, which was now kind of formally broadcasted. Was that yesterday that we talked about that? How Google's doing this new privacy sandbox for Android, which is basically going to keep a lot more of the Android's user data on the device, meaning not sharing it with third parties, which obviously is going to piss off a lot of third parties who have whose business models are dependent on that sweet, juicy data that Android and Google are no longer going to be sharing, similar to what Apple's done recently. But Google says, we're not going to be as bad as Apple, so we're not that bad. We're not as bad as them. And anyway, so there's an in-depth look into this. It's a 2-year transition with the ad industry's input, a marked change from Apple's version of this, which had little external input. So Google's going to do this, as I said yesterday, they're walking a tightrope. They want to improve their balance sheet and then hoard the data, extend the height of their walled gardens, keep all of that juicy data for their juicy ad network, which is their key business model. But they don't want to do that in a way that gets them in trouble with the publishers, as we're already seeing with Apple and the likes, where Axel Springer in Germany has brought together all the publishers of Europe to cry foul with the EU Commission to tell Apple and Google where to stick it. That you can't hoard all that data for yourself just because it's your device. Our business models depend on that data. And we're in Europe, and you're being in a monopoly, and you're bad boys. That you're hoarding all that data from your devices, from your users. We need that data. We've built our businesses on that data. How dare you? You're punishing European businesses. You're a monopoly. You're killing us. Make it stop. Daddy, make it stop. And in that metaphor, the EU commissions the daddy. So daddy steps in and says, hey, Apple, hey, Google, you're bad. You're bad. You're hurting our big media companies that have a lot of influence in our political system. And so that's the crazy game that's going away, that's happening. And Google knows that crazy game is going to happen. So Google's walking the tightrope of how do we get more of what we want while not pissing off the people that we're taking it from. And what a fun tightrope they're walking for the next couple of years to make that happen.
Well, Tyler, that was I think a week and a half ago, I sent you a copy of the email I received from some third party airline benefits thing, and they're suing American Airlines for something similar. Like American Airlines has cut off, oh, what's the name of it? It's like Trivago or one of those type of places that analyze customer data so you can get cheaper rates and stuff like that. American Airlines has cut a lot of them off from getting the customer data. So they're actually in the process of suing American Airlines for the same thing.
Okay. So the next one is, let's bounce over the Mozilla one. That's kind of stupid. That the USDC stablecoin tied to the dollar, USDC stablecoin developer Circle says its forthcoming SPAC deal, which is kind of like an IPO, now values the company at $9 billion, up from half that when the deal was announced. So they've doubled in valuation. Okay, great. Next, Canadian authorities have ordered regulated financial firms to cease transactions from 34 crypto wallets worth over about just under $1 million. And this has been tied to funding the Freedom Convoy. Oh boy, interesting. So the Canadian authorities are ordering the financial firms to cease transactions from crypto wallets to fund the Freedom Convoy. Oh, wow. This is more interesting than it might appear. Here's why. Because this is government controlling the movement of crypto. And that you should pay attention to that one, because that's what
Tyler, where's Ben?
I know, right?
Where's Ben?
Right. Because the whole one of the key the whole premise of crypto is to be able to transact in a way that governments wouldn't be able to do precisely this. So,
and corporations as well, not just governments.
right,
Corporations
it's
as well.
to have a non-custodial, meaning unmanaged way to transact financially without the institutions and without the regulators involved. And now you're seeing why, if you have a regulated, aka bear hugged crypto scenario, where the governments are regulating every link in the chain, then what's the effing point of having it? Honestly, you might as well be on fiat at that point. So this boils down to the endless debate between the truly decentralized camps versus the centralized aka regulated camp. And here's why. This is a really interesting, in some ways, first, in my mind, one of the first marquee interesting examples of this, where government...
Tyler?
Yes.
Could I add a little thought on this that you could also mull over?
Yeah.
Is the fact that there's a gentleman who's very well known in the Bitcoin space. I know he wears a cowboy hat. I think it's cowboy something. Actually, Ben knows of this gentleman. If the Bitcoin maxis usually know him as well. But they've also found a way to, wow, this is brilliant. They've actually seen that, like the people that are supporting the convoy actually saw that their bank accounts have been blocked from Bitcoin as well. And they've now decided to send all of the drivers, specifically seed phrases, that they could access something like 10 million Satoshis, each one of them, by just having that seed phrase from anywhere in the world. And like, if you go through the threads, like I usually do, is go through the rabbit holes of the discussions on the thread, you'll see that they're going after it. This is like now similar to Hayden Thomas from Uniswap and also Peter McCormick from the podcast, that basically they're like, remember when Hayden Thomas, I think his name is, the developer of Uniswap, basically got his bank accounts closed, and he literally got his accounts closed and frozen. And the same thing happened to, I believe, Peter McCormick, that like he was in with 4 banks for 25 years and they canceled his accounts, like closed them with no warning, no nothing. And it's interesting because the folks that are in the Bitcoin space are actually, that are supporting the convoy and the sort of whole thing that's going on in terms of what they're doing and what they're trying to communicate across, they're going to divide it up and they're going to send them through by sending them seed phrases and the wallet. So basically, you can't stop that. And that's why I said, where's Ben? Because Ben would be able to explain this way more fun than I could.
I just invited him.
Awesome.
I just scrolled down and was happy to see he was in the audience.
There you go.
Yeah. So check this out, because one of the big debates of our era is, can governments control Bitcoin? Will they? There's going to be a fight. Make no mistake about it. The governments are going to test their abilities to control Bitcoin, and the question is, can they? And the glimpse, the warm-up battle was the music file trading. Were governments able to control the Pirate Bay or the those types of platforms? And it turns out, yeah, Napster and the likes, Kazaa, LimeWire, what have you. To some extent, they were able to, and obviously, it's a technical issue. And in the case of the Silk Road, were they able to? Well, eventually, it turned out technically they couldn't, and they were. That's an amazing story, by the way. Somebody's got to make that documentary. What a fantastic story that is. They were only able to shut down the Silk Road. Architecturally, it was designed and developed in a way that they couldn't shut it down. And it turns out that the young guy who built the Silk Road, this is where a lot of illegal activities eventually, found a home, because it was, truly unstoppable, except for the fact that the creator had a girlfriend who ended up revealing him to the authorities, essentially. So they were able to find him and shut him down. So aside from that, it would not have been shut down. And the Pirate Bay would be the other really marquee example, because the Pirate Bay still exists today and is still trading all kinds of Hollywood content. All the latest Netflix series are on Pirate Bay and what have you. And they can't do anything about it. And that means that the reason that's important, because it means it is technically possible to build things that governments cannot shut down. And why is that important? Because the question is, and this is an interesting example, this Canadian Freedom Convoy is something that some people are going to want to support, and the government doesn't want people to support it. And the question is, should you be able to support something without the government's blessing or against the government's wishes? Should you be able to spend your money in a way that you want to? So that's where the structure, the platform, the architecture of the financial system that Bitcoin is. Of course, the governments want to control it for precisely these reasons. And here we go. We're going to find out, can Canada control Bitcoin or not? And there's some interesting tweets before we hand it over to our friend Ben to hear what he's got to say on this. Balaji, who's very well versed in this space, tweeted saying that Bitcoin's fundamental value proposition is seizure resistance. Amen. Exactly right. That is absolutely one of the fundamental value propositions, and as important in Canada as it is in Venezuela, he says. Jordan Peterson, who's a Canadian, among other things, is saying on Twitter, "Don't do it, crypto advocates, don't comply." And then Pomp, who's a financial blogger, now CNBC contributor, who's quite a crypto enthusiast, says Canada's federal police force is now demanding that regulated financial firms cease transacting with the Freedom Convoy Bitcoin address. The Bitcoin CEO was unavailable for comment. And somebody else says, of course, the Canadian government's already thought that and is banning any regulated financial entity from providing services to wallets used to donate to the protesting truckers. This may be coming out party for the regulating crypto even harder. Right, because the government is now going to realize, now we know people are going to have this external new avenue to fund things that we don't want them to be able to do. They've got this new additional financial system that exists beyond our territory or jurisdiction, and we need to be able to control that. And so they're now waking up in Canada to realize we need to be able to control Bitcoin. And so watch how they go about trying to exert their control over it. And the question is, will they be able to? That's a very, very, very critical question at the beginning of 2022. So Ben, over to you, my friend.
Hello. Sorry, I was busy on phone calls and things. It will be interesting to see what they try and do. I think it depends how educated the truckers are about Bitcoin ultimately. It is highly seizure resistant, but you need to know what you're doing and you need to understand it. And there's a lot of places where somebody could get in the way or fool you into controlling it or something else. So if they understand it and how you get them the education is a good question, then yes, it is going to be very seizure resistant. I'd be very interested to know what they think they can do about it, because unless they stop all communication to and from the truckers, it's going to be very hard to stop them receiving Bitcoin from somebody around the world. And once they've got Bitcoin, it is possible for them to prevent them turning it into fiat in their country. But once you've got Bitcoin, that in itself is an asset that you can do a lot with, even if you never go back to fiat. So, it's going to be very interesting to watch what they try and do. But I think that the education's a core point. The core point here is it depends who you're trying to do it to.
Right.
It's very easy to block people if they don't understand and aren't determined. But if they do understand and they are determined, it's a completely different story. So I think it's an important factor.
Right. Now, there's a couple of interesting details on a technical basis, which is the Bitcoin address that is receiving the funds, right? And it would be to the benefit of the truckers that that address was never known by the authorities, but ostensibly, it obviously is going to be, because they're going to broadcast it and say, hey, send money to this address, right? And then the question is, by what means will the funds be transferred to that address? And this is where the encryption issue that I've told you about, and why it's so critically important, and why governments are going to insist that they have the ability to circumvent end-to-end encryption. Because what if I contribute to that in some kind of end-to-end encrypted manner through some what is the app that allows for end-to-end encryption communications?
Well, Signal and many others.
Right.
PGP.
So, right. So this is one of many reasons why governments are going to wake up and realize, not only do we need to be able to control Bitcoin, we need to also be able to control end-to-end encryption, because people are going to be able to do these activities without our ability to do anything about it. And
data is on
Yeah,
switch to.
but there's a few different things here though. If the truckers advertise a Bitcoin address, fine, that's fine. If
right.
I see that Bitcoin address and try and send money to it, I don't think we need any encryption there. If I want to cover, I can cover my tracks, so the Bitcoin is not fully anonymous. So the thing, I don't want to do anything anonymously, so I'm not really interested in trying to. If I wanted to donate to the truckers, I'd take a deep breath, decide whether I want to donate. I would say that I can donate, and it would be pretty much impossible with some will to stop me. If I had some will to donate, I'd be able to donate regardless. As long as I was physically free to do it. But yeah, I would be possible to track the fact that I've donated, because the Bitcoin that I would donate, I would have bought on an exchange that is tracked and regulated. So there's the stopping of the transaction is very difficult. The tracking of who has made the donations is not so difficult in general.
Right.
We have to pay taxes as well here in Canada. Crypto is charged this capital gains tax. So I'm incorporated in Canada, so if I accept anything, I'll have to pay taxes on it anyway. So it doesn't really make sense for it to be completely anonymous, because then you won't be able to pay taxes.
But
and that's not going to work.
Canada could make it illegal to donate to that address, for example, yes? But they can only make it illegal for their own citizens. Could Canada then tell Americans or Venezuelans or Guatemalans, or Burmese, that you cannot donate to this Bitcoin address? The Burmese are going to say, "Go screw yourself." Well, I can do whatever I want with my Burmese money. Clinton, glad to see you're back. As a Canadian, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this issue.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tyler. Clinton DeVoe, writer with Troy Media, newspapers and magazines across Canada, as well as a contributor to the Untitled Times.
Hold on, Clinton. I need to plug in my speaker so that everyone in the Twitter space can properly hear you. Give me 2 seconds, please. Can you? Let's try that again. Go.
Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Okay, so for those that didn't hear, Clinton DeVoe, I'm a contributor to Troy Media in Canada, as well as the Ottawa Hill Times. Look, this is a serious issue in Canada, and it's not the way that it's being covered, unfortunately, across various media platforms. It's not really getting into the point that the Bitcoin and or traditional money that is being funded into this organization in Canada has a publicly stated manifesto that they have issued calling for a coup d'etat. It's actually on their website. So the reason why the Canadian government has rightly chosen to freeze assets of individuals involved in this is because we're not talking about a protest or a demonstration. We're talking about a publicly stated coup d'etat, which is listed on the Canada Unity website. That's incredibly dangerous. And generally speaking, I am not a fan of privacy rights being, interrupted. But in this case, it is warranted. Not everything is black and white, unfortunately. And there is a gray. And, there comes a time where foreign characters or individuals that have no relationship to Canadian citizenship have chosen to help fund the takedown of a democratically elected government. And if we allow something like that to happen, we will be falling into the hands of authoritarianism. And I'm a conservative voter, so I'm someone who traditionally would be voting against our liberal government. But in this case, I am fully supportive of what the government of Canada is doing. And what Tyler brings up, he makes a good point, is the security, the encryption, but it does go back to a couple of things. So there's the purchase of the coin, as someone has mentioned, can be tracked. And then, of course, the other issue is that if you attempt to turn that into traditional money that the public would normally consider money, various banks actually have the ability to stop the transaction or decline the transaction. So any amount, I think it's above and over $10,000 in Canada, usually requires you coming in and meeting with the bank, and they have questions for you. They want to track that money because the banks, rightfully so, do not want to be part of some sort of a money laundering process that could get the banks in legal trouble, not just in Canada, but around the world, because Canada does have, economic and legal agreements with countries like the United States or the United Kingdom and other places. And so, there's a little more nuance to this issue. And then furthermore, it should also be pointed out that we're not just talking about a coup d'etat within the Parliament of Canada, but we're also talking about blockades at Canadian border points between Canada and the United States that are also occurring, where individuals, multiple individuals, like not one or two, but multiple individuals have been arrested with machine guns, handguns, long guns, body armor. I mean, this, as crazy as this sounds, Canada is starting to look like a Tom Clancy novel. And for those reasons, I would argue that the interruption in the transfer of Bitcoin, or at least the monitor of what's happening, is the appropriate thing to do. Because if this was occurring in any other country, whether it's the United States or Sweden or, countless countries, they would be reacting the same way that Canada is now. So I'll just place myself on mute. Thank you.
If I could squeeze a couple thoughts, because I'm in Canada. I've been stuck twice in the horrible traffic because of the freedom protests. I think right now on average, if a ride is 30 minutes, it's about an hour and a half to an hour 45. I have so many thoughts because I was saying that Canada usually seems to follow suit with the US. I'm like, oh, is this our mini insurrection? Like this seems to be our version, but apparently. And some of my woo-woo friends find it interesting because early in the pandemic, there was some kind of leaked article going around saying that there would be a certain point where they would call a state of emergency and take control. And they're kind of wondering if this could be one of them. But on the crypto note, I was wondering, it could get really messy, because if they get really creative with it, let's say I'm a freedom convoy person, right? And I said, okay, if they're going to block people that are sending money directly, what if I put out an art NFT and say that, hey, if you buy this, you're supporting freedom, and some unknowing person or knowing could just buy it, and there could be a smart contract being like, oh, every so period of time you might it might draw a little bit. Then what happens then? So it's interesting. Sorry. Thank you.
I just wanted to quickly respond to that. So one of the things that that the speaker is probably aware of, but some people outside of Canada may not be, is that Canada has activated over the last. What that means is that anybody that is connected to the coup d'état, the manifesto that was issued, or anyone that is connected to illegally blockading the international border crossings between Canada and the United States, that those individuals, their money will be tracked, and the government can then go to the banks or trading houses, and they can say, this is what this person has been up to. They are involved in illegal activities, and here they are. And not only will the bank, their financial house, stop their business with that client, but all banks and all banking institutions, credit cards, debit cards, stock portfolios, everything gets frozen. So, the individuals that thought they could do this are going to face a very, very serious long-term penalty, because, as Tyler is aware, it's very difficult to exist in this day and age, without some means to, banking assets, whether it's a credit card or whatever. So there's going to be some serious long-term implications. And I think the reason for that, why the government has chosen to do this, is to send a message that, you are not allowed to blockade borders and literally shut down the economy. So one of the border crossings in particular is generally viewed as the most valuable trade in North America. And that is the Windsor, Ontario, Detroit, Michigan border crossing, where every single day, somewhere between $400 to $500 million USD goes back and forth across that one single border 7 days a week. And so, the individuals who decided to do this, they realize that there's going to be some serious penalties for the actions that they have done over the last 3 weeks.
Okay. So the next issue, the more than the political issue, I'm more interested in the technical issue, because the political issue is just the motive around what to me is the really interesting technical issue that we're going to see repeated in many other instances in many other countries. Yes, Cheryl.
I briefly glanced through the article. I think initially they started off with a GoFundMe to get the donations, but that was suspended.
Precisely.
And then they started to collect. They actually collected all those tokens, but they couldn't. I guess in Canada you can't really use it for much things in the real life. So I think they probably couldn't off-ramp it. So I guess the financial institution will just tell them not to let them off-ramp. So you have tokens, but you just your campaign.
You are 100% correct. That's exactly what has happened, where the electronic part of that has not been able to be converted over into an actual usable asset, because the individuals that would be connected to these to what is happening, they need to be able to purchase things with it, and the things that they need to be able to purchase are not accepted. They can't use Bitcoin. So or other cryptocurrencies. So whether
So
it's
it is worth
gasoline
noting.
or whatever. So in this case, when it goes to a bank, that's where the whole thing is frozen. And I would argue it's the correct and right thing for the banks to be doing.
They were panic buying silver from jewelry shops. At least that's what people on Reddit recently reported. They were hitting up a lot of jewelry shops in downtown Ottawa and buying silver coins and whatever. At least that's what I heard so far.
Okay, so the next topic, shall we, is that Spotify is acquiring Chartable and Podsites, two podcast analytic companies that let podcasters and networks include tags in shows to track listeners. Chartable and Podsites are being bought. Spotify is making more podcast acquisitions, the company announced today. They're just acquiring those two. Spotify itself tweeted saying Spotify acquires the two companies for advertisers and insights for publishers. So it benefits both the publishers, that's the content creators, and the people who want to advertise in them. Because if you are an advertiser, you want to know if your ad was listened to and how long your ad was listened to and how many times it's been listened to and what the listeners are like. Because Spotify wants to build a robust ad network so that you can target people who are in the mood, who are at the gym, who might be in a cafe, who might be chilling out, so that it would be a very unique ad network where you could target people who are in a particular mood, not just a particular demographic, although you could probably do that too. No doubt you can do that too. I think Spotify can figure out how old you are and, your typical demographic data, but the addition of your state of mind could be a very unique proposition for marketers to use in an ad network that other platforms don't really have. So that's partly why you acquire that stuff. Some people are tweeting about it. For example, like Chris Mencia saying, imagine Google Analytics, but for podcasts or for an audio or for any audio for that matter. Spotify must build this to become the audio advertising behemoth. Exactly right. Walt Mossberg says, or you could conclude that Spotify is destroying one of the last vestiges of the open web, amplifying dangerous misinformation and shredding privacy, all while paying the creators of its main product, music, almost nothing. Wow, I didn't realize Walt was so slanted against Spotify. That's quite a heavy slant you got there, Walt, which he's not really known for having. What else? He says, I don't know what you mean by compete. I know that podcast and music streaming aren't existential for Apple and Google, but I happily use Apple Music and Apple Podcasts every day. I can listen to the Vergecast as soon as it drops, and then my music, I'd say they're competing. Okay, so the next one is that Microsoft releases a new Windows 11 preview build with a customizable start menu, 5 new touch gestures, live captions, task manager redesign, and more. Okay, great. Next is from the New York Times. It says, a look at tech recruitment issues as the U.S. unemployment rate for tech workers is 1.7% and 0.2% for cybersecurity experts. Well below 4% for the general economy.
Are you going to just skip over the Microsoft update? Because they had a bunch of cool things like the Android services. Now you can run Android applications on your Windows 11,
Yes.
which is really cool.
Let's do this. We've got 29 people on stage. Flash your mics if you're interested in the Windows 11 update. We got...
Okay.
There you go, Sam.
Unless it actually does something. Not really.
Well, imagine if you can run your Clubhouse without Club Deck now and, on Windows directly. Yes. That'll be fun.
Yes. So you and Niston can DM each other to your heart's content. So the next one is, that I just said from the New York Times, the tech recruitment issues in the U.S. talking about, it says recruiters in tech are desperate for workers, but candidates are the ones who hold all the power. Yeah, it's a employees market because people can't, you if you have the skills, uh, everybody's hiring for tech like crazy. And that's why, cybersecurity experts have a 0.2 unemployment rate, meaning they are willfully unemployed at that point. It's practically zero.
Tyler, we can't find people. We can't
Yes,
find people to do
correct.
anything.
That's
Anything.
correct. Exactly the point. So,
You know why? Because people are going online. I have a friend who quit his job on Cisco, and then he was saying that, yeah, and I'm running an online pizza shop and some other NFT game. Like one of my friends has a node for a game. I was so surprised yesterday. He got it a while ago. He makes $500 a day just turning his computer on 6 hours a day. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, fun.
yeah. So that's just a long, lengthy New York Times article. The next one is that Finland-based Relics Solutions, which helps retailers predict demand using AIs, raises 500 million euros at a 5 billion valuation, bringing its total funding to 700 million. So congrats to Finland and their tech ecosystem for having another unicorn there, and much more than just a unicorn, 5 billion euro valuation. The next is that Twitter expands tipping options to let creators add Ethereum addresses along with Bitcoin addresses, and adds support for Paytm and other payment services. Twitter isn't limiting crypto fans to tipping with Bitcoin. The social network has expanded its tipping options to let creators add Ethereum addresses and other options as well. And in fact, you can do that right now by clicking on either my Twitter profile or the Tech News Twitter profile, both of which have the tip jar feature, because we were one of the first, 100 that were allowed in that little beta. And you can look at our profiles, and in the upper right corner, you'll see a little dollar symbol for the tip jar, and you click on that, and then you can choose how you want to pay. You can tip via Bitcoin or via other payment platforms. And I love how Twitter chose to not be exclusive in that. They're going to allow for lots of different ways for people to choose how they want to send tips, and let the receiver dictate which platforms they're willing to accept payments on. That's a really clever way that they did that. The next one is from the Washington Post about a leaked pitch deck of somebody we know. Clearview AI has told investors that it will have 100 billion facial photos in its database within a year, after growing to 10 billion since early 2020. The facial recognition company Clearview AI is telling investors that it's on track to have 100 billion facial photos in its database within a year. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me in the least, because there's a lot.
Did you say 100 billion?
Yes.
With a B?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yes. So it's because.
But of how many people?
I would imagine nearly everybody.
Yeah, every which way and angle, right? So you can take facial recognition photos from almost every angle, which means that if you have just a corner of somebody's face, you can probably reconstruct it using an algorithm or AI-based algorithm. So you
essentially,
can,
what
yeah.
they're, if you imagine yourself as in the position of Clearview AI for a second, how would you go about acquiring as many facial photos as possible? Well, you would figure out how to go to every single Instagram account and get every single face from every single Instagram photo that's ever been posted on Instagram. And then you do the same on TikTok, and the same on Twitter, and the same on Facebook. And when you add all those facial photos together, you start approaching 100 billion.
Right, but the signal to noise ratio would be high.
Yes, but what they're looking for is repetition, just like in your Facebook or Apple photos, where Apple and Facebook both do a surprisingly good job of matching your friends into their little profiles, and they'll say, hey, is this so and so, and most of the time it's correct. Yeah, that is Uncle.
Yeah, they have a section for repeated faces and selfie shots and whether it's front or back camera, and they file it really well. I've noticed that too.
So there's a bunch of tweets about this one. And I think it'd be interesting to know what else is in that pitch deck from this Washington Post article. It says that this 100 billion images in its index of faces, even as lawmakers worry that the company poses a dangerous threat to Americans' privacy rights. The facial recognition company Clearview AI is telling investors it's on track to have 100 billion. Almost everyone in the world will be identifiable, according to financial presentation from December obtained by the Washington Post. Those images, equivalent to 14 photos for each of the 7 billion people on Earth, would help power a surveillance system that has been used for arrests and criminal investigations by thousands of law enforcement and government agencies around the world. And the company wants to expand beyond scanning faces for the police, saying in a presentation that it could monitor gig economy workers and is researching a number of new technologies that could identify someone based on how they walk, detect their location from a photo, or scan their fingerprints from afar. And indeed, the gait, which is meaning walking, gait detection is already live in the Chinese version of this called SenseTime. So that's not surprising at all that the American version of this company would have the same capabilities. The interesting point here is that how it would help law enforcement and government agencies around the world. Yes, they spend an incredible amount of time trying to find particular people who have either knowingly committed wrong things and they're just trying to find them, or suspects that they want to question. And at the end of the day, it will come down to a human decision as to, after interviewing the person, if they believe that that person was there. And of course, there will be other data points like their geodata on their phone to determine if the person was actually there. So the argument that there will be a lot of false imprisonments, which is perhaps the worst case scenario here, I'm not sure how realistic that is, because you would have to have both a face ID match and a location match based on your GPS at the same time. You'd have to be in the same place at the same time with the same face.
Right, and Tyler, it's not going to be like imprisonment by AI. Somebody's going to actually go in and check your credentials once they have a hit on you and decide that, well, this is a person of interest that we're after. So after they get there, check on you, and maybe, oh, it's the guy, then they'll take you. Hopefully not. And if you happen to be a false positive, then fine, they'll just walk away.
I think there will be a
Next
lot of, it will lead to lots of questioning of people who did things, who did not do wrong things. But it will hopefully, it'll be cross-referenced with GPS data, and then, we can turn that into a huge debate as to how, if we want to have efficient policing or not. Anyway,
I think something similar to this is live in UAE. They have a lot of cameras that they continuously try to make sure that anybody, person of interest, will be tracked from the minute they get to the airport all the way to the minute they get back to the airport and leave. So it's interesting the way they do it, and I think it's working for them. So I don't see a lot of false positives happening there.
Yeah,
I wonder what they're doing about masks.
Right, that's why the gate detection.
That's an interesting point.
That's precisely why the gate detection is of so much interest, is because of masks. Anyway, the next article is from Reuters. It says a profile of Saudi activist whose work with Citizen Lab to expose NSO group spying on her iPhone using Pegasus triggered scrutiny of NSO. A single activist helped turn the tide against NSO group, one of the world's most sophisticated spyware companies. And so they're going into the origin story of how NSO group and Pegasus was exposed from a Saudi activist.
They're in trouble also with the in Europe now. They're being investigated as well over there, and they might also be outlawed there.
Now that's
That's what
if you want to talk about privacy violations, I mean, what do we think is a more egregious abuse of one's privacy? Getting into your phone completely, utterly, and even seeing messages that you type as you type them that you don't even send. Having full, complete root access of your mobile device, and or uh, harvesting all of your social media photos into a database. I would.
I think accessing your phone.
I think accessing my phone, which is damn near my. By the way, the microphone and camera are also engaged, accessible. So, I mean, if you want to talk about privacy violations, having your camera and microphone on your phone at all times, I would argue that is a very legitimate breach of privacy. Taking photos that I personally publicly put online publicly, if I made it view privately only by friends, then it would not be scrapable, as it's called. But if I leave the photo on for public viewing, or anyone does, do you then get to claim privacy over that photo? Is the debate at hand here? But in any case,
No, but you can claim copyright. You can say someone actually this is my copyrighted material and they're not supposed to be using it.
okay.
The argument is that you've scraped the site, so it's the site saying that you're not allowed to scrape via our terms of use.
Right.
That's the claim.
Yeah.
Right. My point is that I think if we want to talk about egregious violations of privacy, the Pegasus is a far more interesting example than Clearview. It would be my argument.
I doubt anybody's going to argue with that. They are clearly they can know everything about you, your bowel movements, how many times you have, your sleep patterns, anything that as long as you have your phone on you, they know it.
Yeah. So the next article is from the Financial Times. It says ISS tells clients that Apple investors should vote against Tim Cook's $99 million pay and bonus package, citing concern over stock award Cook received in 2021. And ISS is the International Shareholder Services, and they're expressing concerns at Tim Cook's stock award last year, which, let's see how much that netted him. Does somebody know off the top of their head? Cook last year received stock awards valued at $82 million at the time of the grant, on top of a $12 million cash bonus and a $3 million salary. The executive's pay package also included $600,000 in personal security costs and $700,000 for personal use of a private jet. Perks that ISS said significantly exceeded comparable companies last year, taking Cook's total for 2021 to $98 million. So, Top Shareholder Advisory Group has recommended that Apple investors vote against Tim Cook's $99 million pay and bonus package, forcing one of Silicon Valley's most prominent campaigners on equity to defend his remuneration, meaning his pay, at the world's most valuable company. I don't know.
He made them $1 trillion.
I was about to say, Tim's, this is my, you and I share the same point here. Tim Cook's performance, his execution, has been incredible for Apple shareholders. Ridiculous. Unbelievable.
Isn't he CEO of the decade or something like that for last decade?
In terms of shareholder value appreciation, give the 100 million. Are you kidding me? You're gonna
it's like 1/10,000th of the money that he made them.
Yeah,
he made $750 million in 2021 because he sold off, I think, around 4 million older shares that he had accumulated over the years. So that might be their concern.
He's guided the company to become the first company in the world to hit a $3 trillion valuation. Let him have the 99 million.
Let him have it.
Yeah, Jesus, man. What do you have? Better yet, do you have anybody else in mind? If you manage to kind of poo-poo and derail his compensation package. And then he says, okay, well, in that case, I got plenty of other things to do. God knows he has enough money. He never needs to do anything else for the rest of his life. And you succeed in disincentivizing him from continuing as the CEO of Apple. Who exactly do you have in mind to replace him?
No, worse, if he goes against you, knowing all the secrets of Apple, do you really want someone to go out like that, especially at that kind of level of opposition? Um, I can't believe this is happening, honestly.
Anyway.
I mean, to be fair, and this is the funniest part about it, right? Like, people constantly think about leadership and CEOs as being sort of not non-essential, but maybe we all forgot that when Steve Jobs passed away, everybody was counting Apple out, and they have never been stronger than they are currently. Look at what they're doing to Facebook and others. Apple is by far the most dominant, in the most dominant position they've ever been. And I think people just, this is where, people that are commenting on this truly don't know what it takes to do something like this.
Yeah. Okay.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And it's going to skyrocket in 2023 when AR, VR.
Yeah, I mean, their future's bright. I mean, to Donish's point, I mean, they're on a strong footing, where Facebook is kind of in a precarious position of having to pivot into metaverse, and it's a live or die, make or break moment.
But first of all, what position does this ISS have to urge the Apple shareholders to do this? It's none of their business, right?
You could get their voters.
Shareholders.
Yeah, you get shareholders working together. There is votes as shareholders for significant shareholders, and if they get enough significant shareholders voting, then they can add some friction to the process of approving his.
Yeah, they can influence the board, kind of. Yeah. But again, I doubt anybody with good sound financial knowledge will go against what's happening.
Here's another interesting additional contextual point here. Apple historically has said, more than any big company I'm aware of, Steve and Tim have both, I know of multiple instances of Steve, and I know of at least one instance of Tim telling Apple shareholders, here's what we're going to do, and if you don't like it, please sell the stock. This is not for you. I'm not aware of another major company, like in the top 10 or 20 or 30, that have said those words to their shareholders before. So Apple's rather unique in not valuing the opinions of their retail shareholders. So the next one is from Bloomberg, that global financial watchdog, the FSB, warns digital assets could soon threaten financial stability as they become more interconnected with the wider financial system. And this plays back into the previous article about the Canadian convoy and the funding of that, and this battle that's brewing between the powers that be and the new kids on the block with the whole DeFi Web3 situation at hand. So what does it say? Global financial regulators said digital assets could soon threaten global financial stability due to their scale. Yeah, exactly. It's getting to that point where they're starting to feel scared. And they should. That's where they're exactly right. That is they're getting nervous, because a lot of the value that people do labor. When they do their labor, they acquire value. That value can be stored in all kinds of different ways, in cars, art, watches, lingerie, you name it, real estate, what have you. And a lot of people are storing their value in cryptos. And more and more and more and more of that is happening at a not so insignificant rate. And it's gotten to a point where there's enough value being stored in these things that it's causing concern for the traditional systems that hold storages of value, meaning banks, the financial services. And they're understandably nervous, and they should be, because when you have people holding value outside of their traditional ways of holding values, it's concerning them, and it should.
They should be like China. Can't beat them, make your own.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. China is, as usual, full credit. Understood this dynamic before the other countries, long before the others did, and did something about it to their benefit. So the next one is that Nvidia did their quarter earnings with revenues of 7.6 billion versus 7.4 expected, meaning stock goes up 53% up year over year. That's huge. That's 53% up.
They're killing it.
That's amazing for a company of that size. Gaming revenue of 3.4 billion, up 37% year over year. Data center revenue up 3 billion, up 71% year over year on the data centers. Nvidia reported fiscal fourth quarter earnings, crushed it. What a great quarter report! Wow.
Yeah, and that's with their deal with ARM falling apart.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, even without ARM. Yeah, that's a great point. So the next one's from The Verge, that the CSI, the FBI, and NSA, those are the three big U.S. intelligence agencies. All
3 out of 24.
Yes, but those are the big three. They say that Russian state-sponsored hackers targeted U.S. defense contractors. You can think of Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and all of the people who make all of the military stuff for at least 2 years, acquiring export-controlled technology and more. The state-sponsored actors from Russia acquired information on weapons, aircraft design, and combat communication systems over a period of years. According to the alert, Russian-backed actors had cleared defense contractors and subcontractors that supported the Department of Defense in a range of areas, including weapons and missile development, vehicle and aircraft design, surveillance and reconnaissance, and combat communication systems. Compromised entities include contractors supporting the U.S. Army, the U.S. Air Force, the Navy, the Department of Defense, and the intelligence programs. Though intrusions against defense contractors, Russian-backed actors had acquired sensitive, unclassified information, as well as export-controlled technology, CISA had said. Under normal circumstances, technology subject to export control laws requires a license to be released to foreign entities, necessitating approval from U.S. government. Though there is no mention of classified documents being stolen, details suggest that the nature of the information gives a significant understanding of U.S. military operations. Quote, the acquired information provides significant insight into U.S. weapons platform development and development timelines, vehicle specifications, and plans for communication infrastructure and information technology. By acquiring proprietary internal documents and email communications, adversaries may be able to adjust their own military plans and priorities, hasten technological development efforts, inform foreign policy makers of U.S. intentions, and target potential sources for recruitment, meaning intellectual property thefts, essentially. Given the success of current efforts, the FBI, NSA, and CISA anticipate that Russian state-sponsored cyber actors will continue to target defense contractors for information in the near future. Although Russia is known for harboring cyber criminal gangs, direct attribution of cyber activities to Russian state-sponsored actors is rare and represents a forceful statement from U.S. agencies involved. As tensions continue on the Russian border with Ukraine, analysts have been particularly sensitive to state-sponsored cyber attacks from Russia. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, I mean, this comes as a bit of not too much of a surprise, mainly because the DoD admitted back in the fall that they severely underestimated the capabilities of the Russians in other areas, like the development of the hypersonic missiles that we saw them test in May. And generally there's been, I think, a little bit of a disconnect between the United States and other Western sort of intelligence, operational and information sharing sort of networks. And we've seen this play out sort of maybe even in Kazakhstan. There were some articles I was reading that were basically saying sort of the way that the Russians utilized the CSTO and other forms of intervention was sort of basically the past couple of years, the work that Russia's been doing to sort of acquisition some of this information has given the Kremlin and the Russian defense department sort of an emboldened sense of, well, now's a good time to sort of push our self-interest further. And then when Afghanistan happened, I think that's, all coming together. So this work has been sort of a long time coming, and I think we're sort of seeing it accumulate and play out in real time through Ukraine and others at the moment. So yeah, it's definitely something that's a concern, and the Brits have been, I think, flagging this for quite a while as well. But that's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
So the next one is from Reuters. They say they have sources that Trump's Truth social network app has opened to around 500 beta testers, which is a very normal number for beta testers because that used to be the limit of what's called test flight, which is the app that Apple allows apps to use to beta test stuff with the users. 1 year after Trump was banned from major social networks, details about former U.S. President Donald Trump's new social media app are trickling out as about 500 beta testers have begun using an early version of Truth Social, two sources told Reuters. Donald Trump Jr. tweeted, "Time for some truth," with a link about it. And yeah, this, I don't know, this isn't really big news. Maybe the news is that they've been I guess they're on track. Was it 6 months ago? It would take you a few months to develop a social media app, and it was a few months ago that they announced it. So they should be at the phase where they're doing 500 people beta testing. The question is, where will it go from there? Because that's the important question. The next is, analysis identifies more than 4,000 criminal whales holding over $25 billion worth of stolen cryptocurrencies following a major jump in illicit balances in 2021. 4,000 criminal whales holding $25 billion worth of stolen cryptocurrency. My God. That's a lot of Dogecoin. That's a lot of NFTs. So Bloomberg says India's 30% tax on crypto trading profits, effectively legitimizing the industry, has caused usage of Binance-owned WazirX, CoinSwitch, and others to surge in India. Bloomberg says Okta's CMO leaves the company. Who cares? App Annie rebrands as Data.ai. Okay. Politico says experts say automated transcription app Otter AI. Oh, Simon, who joins us very often here in Tech News Around the World, that works at Otter AI. So experts say automated transcription app Otter AI and its competitors offer only lax security that could endanger sources. What is that about? And let's ping in Simon to get, he's their head of marketing, as I recall. Let's see if Simon, I spelled Simon wrong because I'm an idiot. Let's try and ping in Simon. Simon. Due to the beautiful power of Clubhouse. Let's see if we can get Simon in here. Where are you, Simon? There he is, Simon Lau. Here we go. Pinging Simon, calling Simon, putting out the bat signal for Simon, because we happen to know somebody behind this headline, and that's the real beauty of social audio news doing. The Political article says, "My journey down the rabbit hole of every journalist's favorite app. Otter AI has saved reporters countless hours transcribing interviews." Right, because when you're a journalist and you go interview somebody, wouldn't that be nice if you just held out your phone and they spewed everything out of their mouth into the phone and then magically presto, it's turned into text? Wouldn't that be nice? Well, that's what Otter AI does. That used to take journalists endless hours of time, and now it's rather being done auto-magically. So the story says that though he lives in Washington, D.C., is active on Twitter and frequently gives interviews to the press. Oh, sorry. Mustafa Aksu is a wanted man. The article begins. You've hooked me. You've got me, Politico. I'm interested in your article. That's a great opening line. Mustafa Akso is a wanted man. Though he lives in Washington, D.C., is active on Twitter, and frequently gives interviews to the press, he's intensely aware that the Chinese government is always looking over his shoulder. Aksu is a Uyghur and an outspoken human rights advocate at the DC-based Uyghur Human Rights Project. As befitting a China antagonist, phishing attempts, warnings from Facebook of attacks on his account, and emails from entities impersonating other Uyghurs are routine occurrences. He said he's even received voice messages from unidentified people with the regional accent of his hometown urging him to click on certain suspicious links. The feeling of being surveilled or tracked is not nice, and I've been worried about my personal safety too, he says. The Chinese government's pervasive surveillance of Xinjiang Muslim Uyghur population makes any contact Uyghurs have with friends and relatives overseas a potential red flag for police scrutiny. When 4 family members died in succession in recent years, a heartbroken Aksu refrained from calling home to ask about the circumstances of their death to shield relatives from potentially dangerous state scrutiny for having overseas ties. So when I talked to Aksu in November, I made sure to use Signal, an encrypted phone app, to protect our discussion about psychological trauma affecting Uyghurs overseas. The next day, I received an odd note from Otter AI, the automated transcription app that I had used to record the interview. It read, "Hi, to help us improve your Otter experience, what was the purpose of this particular recording titled Mustafa Aksu?" 3 responses were offered: personal transcription, meeting or group collaboration, or other. I froze. Was this a phishing attack? Was Otter or some other entity that has access to Otter's servers spying on my communications or conversations? I contacted Otter to verify if this was indeed a real survey or some clever phishing ruse. In an intentional confirmation, an initial confirmation that the survey was legitimate was followed by a denial from the same Otter representative, laced with a warning that I not respond to that survey and delete it. Oh shit. Wow. My communications with Otter were all restricted to email and were sporadic, often confusing and contradictory. In the 3 months since the initial exchange, and there was more to come, I've gone down the rabbit hole talking to cybersecurity experts, press freedom advocates, and a former government official to try and understand what vulnerabilities and risks are present in this app that's become a favorite among journalists for its fast, reliable, and cheap automation transcription. We make privacy versus utility trade-offs all the time with our tech. We know Facebook sells our data, but we still post baby pictures. We allow Google Maps access to our location, even though we know it leaves an indelible digital trail. And even savvy, skeptical journalists who take robust efforts to protect sources have found themselves in the thrall of Otter, a transcription app powered by our AI, and which has virtually eliminated the once painstaking task of writing up interview notes. That's an overlooked vulnerability that puts data and sources at risk, sources say. The fact that these AI-powered services exist can turn a couple hours of audio into a reasonable written transcript, often in a matter of minutes, is a complete game changer. You get the idea. These run on machine learning, which means they expose your data to the algorithm that is both transcribing your text and almost certainly using your text and audio to improve the quality of the future transcription. Otter and its competitors, which include Descript, are digital warehouses whose advantages of speed and convenience are bracketed by what experts say can be lax privacy and security protections that may endanger sensitive text and audio data, the identities of reporters, and the potentially vulnerable sources they contact. Shit. Oh, damn. That's hot. That's hot. I had not thought of that. That's crazy. So basically, journalists use Otter. They can't not use it. It saves them too much time. They're hooked. There's no going back on that one. And the obvious problem here is that Otter could be hacked quite easily. It's, they don't have Google level protection, and if they should ever get hacked, especially by somebody like China or Russia, then all of this, ostensibly their sources to those journalists, would now be known, and that would be crazy town if journalist sources were to become known.
By the way, Tyler, I think I remember Pierre and Simon also have a collaboration to use Otter AI on Club Deck.
Yeah, in fact,
I think Clubhouse is also using it, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, I recall telling Pierre, why don't you use, I asked her that feature and even said, why don't you meet with Simon and add transcription, real-time transcription. So, wild. That's wild. Had not thought of that.
Tara, do you think that there might be some artistic liberties here taken by the author?
Yes.
Yeah, so it might not be as, sinister as it is. It does sound,
Maybe.
it is fun. It is exciting to
Not if,
read about this, but
but hang on. I mean, it's not theoretical. If that survey that journalist received is not from Otter and is pretending to be from Otter, that means Otter's hacked. That's what that means.
that's one thing. But also, it means that some actual entity is paying a whole lot of money just to be able to do this kind of stuff, because these things are not cheap. Somebody has to actually have an effort, put like a big effort, and if you are not really like Osama bin Laden, it's going to be kind of like, that why would you follow this one guy who's he's a person of interest, but this costs a lot to do. So
Okay, you know what? All the AI founders and co-founders are Chinese, and where's the database?
Oh, great question. Facebook, it says, my concern was that my interview with Aksu had somehow caught the attention of the Chinese government's international efforts to surveil and harass Uyghur activists, even though a hack or a government demand, either through a hack or a government demand to the company. Facebook revealed in March that it had blocked from the platform a group of Chinese-based hackers that had targeted Uyghurs living abroad with malware to enable surveillance. Facebook didn't directly implicate the Chinese government in those efforts, describing them as well-resourced and persistent operation while obfuscating who's behind it. A Washington Post analysis of hundreds of Chinese government documents published in December revealed at least 300 official projects dedicated to collect data on foreign targets from sources such as Twitter, Facebook, and other Western social media. An analysis of hacking of News Corp revealed on February 5th via a SEC filing indicated that hackers had China links. The cybersecurity firm Mandiant concluded that the hackers sought information to benefit China's interests. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson responded by saying that China firmly opposes and combats all forms of cyber attacks. After repeated requests about the purpose of the survey, an Otter representative finally acknowledged that they had sent it to me. Oh, thank God. Something verified by the director of cybersecurity at the EFF, who checked the email headers. Otter initially described the inquiry as, well, who cares? Thanks, sweet Lord Jesus, that was not a phishing attempt. Privacy policies of transcription apps offer little comfort for the data security minded. The Otter privacy policy claims the right to use users' personal information, including any text, images, or videos that you upload, both to help improve can be shared with third parties. Otter said those third parties include 11 different types of entities, including platform support providers, advertising partners, and law enforcement agencies, public authorities, or other judicial bodies and organizations.
yeah,
For
but
that,
they have to comply with the law. So if they get a subpoena, they would have to provide that kind of information.
For that reason, the privacy policy cautions that subscribers get information consent from anyone who they record using the app. Wow. Other specificities in the privacy policy that users have the right to receive an explanation of how we use user data and who we share it with. Bum, bum, bum. Wow. So anyway, we'll pause there because it's a long article. It really is a deep dive. And then the last paragraph says, the last two paragraphs. Journalists, quote, really have to engage in a risk assessment about the threats versus the efficiency and utility of using transcription apps. If you're a journalist who routinely interviews Uyghurs or dissidents in Russia, no, probably not. I asked Aksu how he felt about the possibility that our conversation might have been vulnerable. With years of experience of Chinese government surveillance, he expressed resignation about the possibility that our communication had been compromised. quote, I get harassed constantly by the Chinese government, so I kind of get used to it, he said. Okay. Wild thought. I had not considered that. So the next one is DoorDash did their quarterly earnings report, up 33% year over year. Twitter now lets bot account holders add a label to indicate their tweets are automated, rolling out globally today. And
That's kind of cool.
yeah, those are your big boring articles for today, and so that allows us to get into the tweets as we do, right? Yeah, those are the boring ones. Yeah, those are the big ones. We're done with the big ones. Great. Well done. We got to get into these tweets. Anxiety. Okay, so the first one's from Katerina. At Caltech has identified genes. Whoa, where did that article go? Katerina, what happened? Where did your article go? Hold on here. 10 minutes ago. Sorry. There it is. Caltech identified genes in gut microbiome that facilitate conversion of tyrosine for EPS that crosses blood-brain barrier and decreases maturation of other stuff, resulting in anxiety. Oh, interesting. A study comparing mice engineered to synthesize a metabolite shows the metabolite passes into the brain. Anxiety linked to gut microbial metabolite in mouse and human. So there's the plausible conclusion there is that there's a genetic component to anxiety through the gut microbial metabolite. Wow. Would you like to know if you have the gene that would lead you to have the gut microbial metabolite that leads to anxiety? I think you would. I would, and so that I can know what I can do about it. And that's why I'm advising Arcus AI. But go ahead and slide me a DM if you want to get in on the Arcus AI beta test so that you can get tested and updated whenever these types of articles are found. Thank you for that one, Katerina. I just retweeted it to the Tech News Twitter account. And Jeff G sends in this one, that Russian fighter jets came extremely close to U.S. Navy planes. The U.S. military said that 3 U.S. Navy maritime patrol aircraft experienced unprofessional intercepts by Russian aircraft. Not a surprise, given what's going on. The next is also from Jeff G from Gizmodo that I'm retweeting now to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW, that California will stick solar panels over canals to fight 2 disasters at the same time. This is genius. We did it. Hold on. Where's the audio effects here? We got to bust out the clap for California here. So California, for those who don't know, I grew up there my whole life, so I do know, but Southern Californians know very well that we get the water from the Rocky Mountains through the Colorado River all the way down to Southern California. Now, that comes through what's called a big aqueduct. It's essentially a man-made river. It's a concrete river that channels the water, very, very long distances. And of course, as it goes through Southern California, a lot of that water evaporates. Yes, obviously. Now, what if we covered the aqueduct, which is totally open to the air and evaporates a lot of water? What if we covered it with solar panels, reducing the evaporation? And where else are you going to put the solar panels? Why not put them on top of the aqueduct to stop the evaporation? It's brilliant. Why not put it there? Where else are you going to put it? So, lovely concept there. And whoever...
What do you mean concept, Tyler? Singapore already have it and many other countries too.
Yeah, but you guys are educated, okay? So we're a little slower over here in California. So let's just applaud again. We're going to applaud yet again. You guys with all of your smart IQs and your perfect SAT scores over there, of course you thought of that 10 years ago, but we're just figuring it out, okay? So we're going to go ahead and pat ourselves on the back for doing what Singapore did 10 years ago. So the next one is, Canada's major banks go offline in mysterious hours-long outage. 5 major Canadian banks went offline for hours, blocking access to online and mobile banking as well as e-transfers for customers. Gee, I wonder what they're doing over there in Canada, eh? What are you hosers doing over there? Sounds like you're trying to
Maybe
stop,
it's fallout from the geomagnetic storm. Who knows?
or maybe they trying to figure out who's sending money to them truckers, eh? So the next,
Yeah.
yeah, could be that. Yep. The next one is Ukraine passes law legalizing Bitcoin. And what else do we got? From Katerina, underground carbon dioxide storage idea is cracked. In a new experiment, researchers at Columbia University are learning more about the technique's vulnerabilities. Okay, and now SpaceX's broadband division now has over 250,000 active Starlink accounts. Active Starlink user terminals, 250,000. That's a quarter of a million. That's not bad. Each of them paying at least $100 a month. Some of them paying
Right. And
$500 a month.
500.
Yeah,
Exactly. 500 initial, then $99 a month.
yeah. So they're already making 25 million a month. So the next one is,
That's nothing. That's the cost of like a quarter of a cost of one launch. So
yeah. Well, I mean, they're investing infrastructure that will take. I wonder what the projected payoff time is for Starlink. How many years? I recall Elon saying that it could be insanely profitable.
could be, but it's going to take some
Oh,
time, and yeah, it is costly initially, and they're already in the 1700 satellite range, so
right.
that's a lot of
But
satellites.
perhaps not as costly as it might seem, because they might need to launch those rockets anyways. And I'm curious if they're able to give higher utilization of rockets. They're just piggybacking on empty rocket space that they weren't able to sell to other private companies.
No, they're mostly sending their own. They're sending like in the tens. Like last time, I think it was like 49. 40 of them got damaged. The ones that were sent up
Yeah,
on February 2nd,
yeah,
3rd.
yeah. We read that headline. I remember that. But they might have some internal reasons for the why they want to have like high volume of launches, and this gives them a very good reason to do those launches. Like maybe they were planning on this. This really helps as a kill two birds with one stone kind of affair, where they want to have a lot of launches to prove feasibility and safety and all those things. Anyway, it
The
might
other
be.
day, Venetia shared an article that I think to date about only a quarter million of this. I mean, is it the base station or router are so far? So he's just saying that after all this hype, how come the sale is so bad?
They didn't even go that public in most countries yet.
Right. Yeah, it's still very early days. Okay. Yeah, we covered the facial recognition one from Evan. The criminal whales we covered. JT sends in one. Why you can't have legs in virtual reality? Great question, JT. Do tell. Why can't we have legs in virtual reality?
Because the facial scanners can't scan that low.
JT, you over there in the Twitter space? No. Professor Osif found the article that gut bacteria linked to cognitive function. We read that one yesterday, I recall, from Katerina. And JT found another one 2 hours ago that Meta says full body tracking probably not viable with inside out headsets. Yeah, it's going to be hard.
They need to merge that earlobe technology they had that they can define the whole human body by the shape of your earlobe to their helmets.
Well,
Maybe that'll help.
they need leg trackers. I mean, you're going to have to wear gloves to track what your hands are doing. You're going to need to wear either special shoes or something around your ankles, like a bracelet for your legs, so that the VR system knows what your legs are doing. Yeah, Dr. Friend, you got a thought on that?
Yeah, about 2 months ago, I was at a meeting in Facebook in Meta Horizons, and I asked the devs about leg tracking, and they gave me the standard answer, which is inverse kinematics. You know, they can't make it track from the headset because the headset's not powered enough. But there are other virtual worlds where your legs kind of approximate and drag along, and it looks okay. My thought is, I don't like the idea of having half a body. You know, I'd much rather have a sort of clunky walk than not have a lower half to my body. But they are a long way off in getting that to work with kind of an immersive realism. Done.
Okay. And humans perceive AI generated faces to be more trustworthy than real faces. That one's from Anita. Thank you, Anita. And BB found one that top talents in Korea chip makers offered later retirement. Engineers at South Korea semiconductor chip makers are increasingly being offered the chance to put off retirement. Congratulations, you can defer retirement. The digital euro is advancing. According to the next story, the European Central Bank wants to work on a prototype in 2023 and plans for its arrival in 2025. And BB also found this one from Nikkei Japan, that Taiwan is taking aim at China with a new draft law on semiconductor espionage. Economic espionage would carry up to 12-year prison sentence.
Yeah, maybe that's the only in the world, right? For
Well, it's because Taiwan has a lot of intellectual property that China would do anything for, and including invade Taiwan, it seems. And Taiwan wants to protect that intellectual property, and China desperately wants it. And we've read headlines many months ago that the main semiconductor company in Taiwan, TSMC, had found a lot of Chinese spies inside of the company, which is not really a surprise. But I guess to discourage that kind of behavior, they want to have stronger punishments, right, BB? That's the whole idea. So
that's the whole idea, and especially in the past, TSMC's high officials, high-ranking officials were recruited by China, and of course they didn't succeed the plan in the end. But still, yeah, that's the very important issues here. So that's why our executive yuan just raise the punishment. Actually, we already have a law about that, but it's not. No, the punishment is not strong enough. So this time, so 12 years. So that means you're gonna put in the jail instead of those fines. That's hope to keep the at least to keep the secret here, and if you get the IPs here. So, and along with U.S. as those scrutiny and those sanctions on the for example, the ASML's equipment. But of course, we read the news that the Chinese companies already selling so-called not infringement IP equipment in China. So we hope to at least to keep this uh, under off their hands for a more longer period. Yes, that's it.
okay. So the next one I have is from BB, that from USA Today, that a woman possibly cured of HIV using novel but rare treatment, researchers say. A woman possibly was cured of HIV using a new transplant method involving umbilical cord blood.
And this is the first woman that's potentially cured of this HIV. So that the importance is that it's possible that across all gender or ages, HIV is curable.
Mm-hmm. So
didn't Moderna say that they have a vaccine for HIV now, or
yeah,
coming up in March?
I remember reading that headline that they're testing it. I think they're in human trials. Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yes, indeed. The next is from Ken Frankwell, that fans can now discover tickets through Snapchat. Searching for tickets for an event just got a whole lot easier, all thanks to the partnership between Snapchat and Ticketmaster. They call it Ticketmatcher. Music fans can now find their favorite shows via Ticketmatcher inside of Snapchat. That sounds kind of cool. And the Arctic could, speaking of cool, the Arctic could see ice-free summers by 2035, reshaping global shipping routes. Arctic transit today is no small feat and is still highly unpredictable, but climate change could make shipping easier and more common in the years ahead. Great news. Great news. The next one is that Bill Gates and Chris Sacca invest in energy storage startup called Antora to help heavy industry go green. Antora Energy takes zero-emission energy from wind and solar farms and converts it to heat, which it stores in solid carbon blocks. The thermal storage, as it's called. Very cool. Chris, indeed, has, I think he has his fund for these types of global positive investments, and God bless him for doing that, and everyone else who's doing that. Bill Gates is certainly doing that. But Chris and Chamath and others, so God bless those dudes for committing big piles of money to helping prevent that previous article from becoming a reality of the snow-free Arctic. It's what a terribly dystopian thought. No, that does it for now. That does it for now. We will pause there with 8 minutes to go, and we will meet. Is today Thursday? It is. So we will meet tomorrow, same bat time. Yeah. Final thought, Cheryl?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, everybody.
ありがとう。お疲れ様です。
Okay.
Thanks.